think let's get started. So yeah, as I said, I'm Aaron. I'm the marketing manager here at Wonderworks, and I'll be helping today alongside with Meg, who's our co-host and our very own creative strategist. So thank you all for taking the time to join us today, both our audience and our speakers. This is clearly a topic that's really on the minds of many people across the industry, and we're super excited to be bringing together today's panel of industry experts to unpack that with you. So, just a little bit about us. If you're not familiar with us, we're Wonderworks. We're a London-based creative agency working solely with drinks and the drinks industry. And this webinar is part of the WonderNETwork, which is a community of drinks professionals that we bring together each quarter to network or share insights from one another and really, spend some time together unpacking a mega trend or a major shift impacting our industry today. Today, that is Gen Z. Which leads me on to a little bit about why we're here. Why are we here? So Gen Z is already reshaping how people drink, how they socialize, how they connect with brands. And for drinks brands and big global drinks companies, small and large, this is really one of the biggest generational shift that we've seen in decades in terms of drinking behavior and patterns. So with us at Wonderworks, we're seeing this kind of increase of Gen Z come up in not only kind of briefs, but it's also increasingly something that's at the forefront of our clients' minds, whether that's brands asking, how to stay relevant with that market, how to develop strategies for a generation drinking very differently, or really just simply understanding what this audience really values and how to connect with that. So we've got a really simple goal today, a couple simple goals. The first is really to move beyond the stereotype and discuss and understand who Gen Z really is. Second, to explore what's resonating with them versus what's falling flat. And then lastly, to really share practical insights and tools into how brands can connect in a way that feels both bold, relevant, culturally fluent, whilst continuing to support brand growth and longevity for years to come. So that's going to kind of form the basis of our discussion today. And we'll also be running some live polls so that you can share your perspective along the way. We'd love to hear from the audience. So please do feel free to get involved and share any questions that you've got in the chat. So without further ado, let me hand over to the real experts, our speakers, and first our brilliant host, Megan. So Meg, over to you.
Awesome. Well, thank you, Aaron, and hello, everyone. It's a real pleasure to be speaking with you all today, and hopefully this is going to be a really insightful hour and a half session with all of our industry experts. So really, why are we here to talk Gen Z? And quite simply, it's the generation that is rewriting the rules of drinking. I've been in the drinks world since starting my career. I began at Brewdog, then running my own social media agency that specialized within the drinks industry during the pandemic. And of course, I'm now here today speaking to you as a strategist at Wonderworks. So, over the course of the last 6 or 7 years in my time in the industry, I've certainly watched brands try and very often fail to connect with that younger audience. But what's fascinating is that Gen Z aren't only just drinking differently, they're socializing differently, they're buying differently, and expressing their identity differently to other generations before them. It's a complete mindset shift. So, really, today, what we want to explore is its mindsets, not metrics, the behavior shifts, and how brands need to follow this changing demographic. What is genuinely creating cut through in a very busy industry, and then what is being lost in the background noise? And last but not least, how can brands stay relevant in a culture that is constantly evolving? And of course, there is absolutely no way I could do that alone. I am joined by an amazing group of panelists today who live and breathe the industry, but all taking it from different angles. So it's about time that I introduce them to you all. So first up, we have Mary, who is Head of Insights, Media and Innovation at Heineken Ireland. Mary brings nearly 2 decades of industry and agency experience into her current role, where she's leading everything from low and no to ready to drinks, and of course, stouts, being in Ireland. She's got a real sharp lens on how Gen Z is reshaping Irish drinking culture. Next, we head over to Glasgow and we have Ben, who's the senior digital marketer at C&C. So Ben began his career actually in photography, moving into social media before cutting his cloth with the likes of craft brewers of Brewdog, like myself, and Magic Rock. So he is now responsible for digital strategy across the heritage brands like Bulmers and Tennent's and how they reach new audiences. Next up, we have the lovely Millie, who, to her own admission, is a multi-hyphenate, an author, a creator, and a founder of the Sober Girls Societies, the UK's largest community for sober and sober curious women. So from running in real life events to managing a WhatsApp group that has thousands of daily drinks recommendations, Millie has a really unique window into Gen Z and what they're actually choosing to drink and why. And then we have the lovely Josh, who is a co-founder of White Box Cocktails. So Josh and his team have built White Box around one core idea, making bar-worthy cocktails accessible anywhere. With classics such as the Pocket Negroni and the Freezer Martini, they've really tapped into Gen Z's love of a great design, portability, and authenticity. And last but not least, we have the lovely Daniel, who is founder of High and Dry. So Dan has spent over 20 years immersed in the drinks world, from launching Craft Beer Rising to running drinks-focused marketing agencies before shifting his focus to the rise of the dry economy. His work today explores how alternatives, functionality, and subcultures are all reshaping socializing itself. So together we have a real full spectrum panelists who are going to be able to help us look at everything from those global giant brands to the challengers and the digital first to the sober curious. So that we've got lots to cover. So it's probably best that I dive straight in. So let's start with the basics. Gen Z has ultimately been stereotyped to death. But what is the biggest myth or misconception that you guys think that the drinks industry really needs to unlearn? Mary, it would be awesome if you'd be able to kick us off from an insight perspective, and then I'd love to expand that question out to the wider group.
Yeah, sure. Thanks, Megan, and thanks, Aaron. I think stereotypes always oversimplify anyway, but there are patterns and behaviours that really distinguish Gen Z from the other generations. And of course, within that, there's going to be nuances. So Gen Z are navigating like a very different world than all the older generations. But I think the biggest misconception around Gen Z is that they're no fun. So I've just spent the weekend. I'm fresh in the door from a festival. So I've been immersing myself with Gen Z, and I have to say they know how to have a good time. So the thing about it though is it's very much on their terms. There was lots of cool fashion and energy, and all the Gen Z people seem to be having a blast, with and without alcohol, which aligns with the insight around how for Gen Z, alcohol's kind of part of the occasion, but not the occasion itself, which is probably quite different to millennials and older gens. Um, like they're living at home probably in Ireland, certainly 7 and 10 are living at home. So they're probably in their childhood bedroom and they want escapism. So, music is a great way to facilitate that. And I think they're really prioritizing connections. And, I feel bad for the generation because there's a lot of anger and a lot of frustration from local and global unrest, and that it is impacting their outlook, but it's actually impacting it in a positive way because now they are looking for escapism and they're more carefree with their spending and they want to live in the here and the now and to seek that escapism. So, they're traveling and they're moving abroad because they want to, even if they have to, for opportunities. It's a positive experience for them. So, I guess also the other thing that's part of the stereotype, and it's so true though, is back on their terms, they are prioritizing their physical and mental health. And I know Midley will probably talk about this later, but everything just a little bit more considered, and a little bit more individualist than previous generations.
Yeah, everything you're saying is ringing true there. Like, to your point, they're traveling a lot more, they're valuing those experiences with people that they care about and making memories rather than maybe investing in material things like houses that the previous generations would. Um, yeah, absolutely aligned with you on that, Mary. Is there anything else anybody else has to add on this? What's a big misconception that you think the drinks industry hasn't considered about Gen Zs? Dan?
Well, just the myth that they don't drink. I know it's counterintuitive to what I'm going to be talking about, but I genuinely believe that Gen Z, it's not the fact that they don't want to drink, because they couldn't necessarily afford to drink in the way that we used to drink when we were younger. So I think there's a big myth that Gen Z is a as a generation is totally abstaining from alcohol.
Yeah, it really depends on what you read, right? Some articles will say that they're not touching alcohol nearly as often, whereas others are saying, no, Gen Zs are absolutely still participating in the industry. Millie, you might have something to add to that.
Yeah, I mean, I think my biggest myth as well was kind of following on from Mary. I think a lot of people think that Gen Z are very unsociable and there's this whole like loneliness epidemic. We're actually seeing that like so many of them are sociable. And I think we're actually seeing people who like traditionally didn't really socialize before because their only options were stay at home or go out and party. So like one of our biggest events that we've been doing, which is selling out every time, is our like book club that we do. So like people are coming out and they're like reading together, and these are people that are like, I actually didn't really socialize that much for because I literally had two options. So I think it's not that they're not socializing, but the way that they are socializing is definitely changing. So I think that is like a huge one as well. And there's a lot of opportunities for drinks brands, alcoholic and non-alcoholic alike, in these like other pockets of socializing that aren't necessarily like bars and clubs.
Mm.
Yeah, having that opportunity to become a bit more of a lifestyle brand than simply a drinks brand. Yeah, absolutely. What we're going to do is we're actually going to launch one of our first polls of the day. So it would be amazing if those of you who've joined us live are able to participate. So I will let Aaron launch that.
Lovely. Thanks, Meg. Um, all right, so let's give this a go, see if everybody can see it. So, for our first poll of today, how central is Gen Z to your brand or business strategy right now? So, is it at the core, a major focus, on the radar, considered for specific initiatives, a future focus but not a priority yet, or not part of our current strategy at all? So I can see responses coming in quick and fast. So I'll give it a minute. All right. Give another couple seconds. All right, super. Let's see. Let me share the results. Okay. Interesting. Obviously, it's definitely a consideration, it looks like, for the majority here. I think interesting to see that it's, yeah, more potentially initiative specific than kind of at the core or major focus, but still, yeah, definitely a focus for a few. So yeah, interesting to see. Awesome.
I think that leads
Okay.
quite nicely as a segue. Oh, sorry, Ben, please.
Oh no, so I was just going to jump in before. Firstly, thank you so much, and this is such a great panel to be part of. So yeah, I'm listening more than most, I would say probably. But the only thing I had to add and to build on what the rest of the guys have said is that I think one of the things that we're really conscious of is that Gen Z, it's not like just one group, like in the sort of one size fits all youth campaign that you could maybe launch a few years ago. It's just not how you can do things now. There's so many subcultures and areas that individuals are playing in. So yeah, we're really having to sort of focus on the niche and like go after that and be really genuine in those areas. But yeah, it's a real thing to not go down the route of just thinking of it as one generation anymore. It's just so fragmented. So yeah, but completely agree with what the rest of the guys say as well.
Yeah, I think you actually lead really, really nicely into sort of the next question that we have based on that kind of idea of the new drinking culture. And to your point is that the idea that this generation, Gen Z, aren't, a distant future audience, that, they're living in the here and now, and they're actively shaping our categories and how brands show up in the world. And, as we've already started to touch upon, everyone is talking about that idea of Gen Z as a generation drinking less. But, what do we think that they're actually doing instead? Millie, you've already touched on the idea that actually your book clubs are one of your most popular events, but it would be really good for us to kind of take that one step further and consider, where are the opportunities for our brands? And I thought it'd be great, actually, Dan. I thought you have a really good insight to this, and you've had this front row seat into the rise of the dry economy, and I know you've worked over in the US where it's a really big category. So we know that Gen Zs and youth in general are turning to other substances too, out with alcohol. So what are you seeing within this kind of rise of the dry economy? And do you think are some of the more untapped opportunities that people could tap into?
Yeah, look, it's absolutely fascinating, really, because I think you can see, just with what successes brands have been having in the UK, for example, Goodrays and Trips, big CBD brands are two of the biggest, fastest growing soft drinks in the UK, and kind of markets where kind of there is a choice, in the US, for example. Cannabis consumption has overtaken alcohol consumption on a daily basis for the first time in 2024. So you can see where it is available, people are choosing an alternative. And what I'm seeing is, there's a huge grey market out there. So this kind of straddling between what is legal and what is not legal, which we have not seen in the past. When I was in the States, for example, psilocybin psychedelics are being reappraised over there, and state by state there's going to be new legislation. But you could get an FMCG looking, magic mushroom chocolate bar delivered to your house in a Tesla. So this is happening. And in the UK, there are brands. I know if anyone knows this, but there's a brand called the Dank Bakery, for example, where you can have again a very slick looking FMCG delivery to your door. So look, I'm saying that I'm seeing this kind of grey market, which is it's not a place where brands on this kind of webinar could play, for example. So this is normally the bastion of founders. So what I'm seeing is the kind of opportunities. Where do you play on this spectrum of legality? Because I do believe there is going to be a world in the next 5 or 10 years where we do have a legalized cannabis market in the UK, and it is about reappraising some of these previously vilified drugs and understanding how they can play a part in a more holistic wellness kind of routine. So where are you going to play in that spectrum is I think the biggest untapped market. And if we go back to what is legal in the UK, CBD, for example, nootropics and adaptogens, that area is still the Wild West a little bit. So kind of like dosage, efficacy, perceived effect are really important to kind of to evaluate. And I think no one's grabbed hold of this yet, and I think there is an opportunity for bigger brands to really dive into this space where they do have bigger budgets to understand what the effects of these adaptogens and nootropics are, and and get ahead of that, so we can all really understand what's kind of working in this space. But we're trying to bridge the gap between clear consumer demand of wanting other mood altering substances, but the legalities and the kind of legislation, playing catch up. There's one other opportunity that I see, and that's traditionally alcohol and drinks brands are focused on channel and occasion. And I think there's an opportunity here to focus on mood alteration first. So what mood are you looking to emulate, or what shift are you looking to make? So I think that's a really kind of clear opportunity for brands today.
Yeah, I absolutely love that. And I think that's actually something that we could chat a bit more around, especially with the work that you do, Millie. If we think about, the changing relationship with alcohol, and if we're wanting to tap into that mood, how can brands be connecting with that from an experiential perspective? Or if we think about, mental health is incredibly important to this generation. So, how can we kind of tap into all of this, and how can brands do it well? Have you actually seen any brands live out in the market who are looking at this maybe mood altering space?
Yeah, I think, Trip is a huge one. It gets recommended constantly in our WhatsApp groups because I think, especially for people who are trying to change their relationship with alcohol, one of the biggest barriers is like learning how to relax for the first time, or like learning how to socialize for the first time. So if you're providing a product that is also promising to help with some of those things, I think that's where you can like really benefit. And I think that's where it's also being like really clear in your messaging of what kind of product is your product. Is it a product that is for like that occasion of like winding down, chilling out? Is it one to make you more sociable? I think another one that is doing really well is like Three Spirit, because I think it's got very clear, like, okay, this is the product that is going to help you socialize. This one's going to, chill you out. So I think that is really helpful in like the messaging of like people knowing exactly like what they're going to get. And I think benefits as well is also like really good. We see it with like a lot of drinks that also have added benefits, so that's like, vitamins, protein, sodas, all of these things. I think people are looking for something else from their drink. Like taste is still really like, top level, but I think as well people are like, okay, what extra thing can I get from my drink as well? So I think that's, yeah, really important.
That education piece from the brands themselves, like speaking to consumers in a language they understand to get them to make the shift.
Yeah, I think 100%. I think especially around like products like CBD, there is, I think if you're, some CBD brands just assume that people know that it's like okay to have. There is still a bit of confusion, I think, especially for people who are stopping drinking. We get questions all the time. Like one of the biggest, I think, like I say barriers for the no and low thing is still this 0.5 issue. Like
Mhm.
when you're in the industry, you just think it's so obvious and that everyone knows. But I would say every day we get at least three people saying, hey, I've seen this 0.5 drink. Is that like okay for me to drink if I'm like not trying to drink? So I think some of the most basic education still needs to be tackled before we go on to this all like really fun, exciting stuff. Like, what is CBD? Is it legal? Is it a drug? How is it going to affect you? I think some of that real like basic education is actually just missing from this. And I know it is hard because when you're in it, you're like, everyone knows. And I think a lot of it is sometimes repeating the same thing over and over and over again, because we get questions about like our events, things like that all the time that we've answered a million times. But with social, it's just so fast moving that sometimes you do have to keep repeating yourself and keep repeating the basic things about your brand and what it is.
Yeah, and to your point, like we're in a bit of an echo chamber ourselves if we say these things all the time, and we know that 0.5% your mouthwash has probably got more alcohol in it than your 0.5% beer. But you're right, to the lay consumer, that's not common knowledge, and it's something that we shouldn't forget. Actually, that simplicity of education is so, so important. And if
I
we
think,
think about
sorry, I
Mary,
think
oh,
just a
sorry,
bit
Dan.
yeah, and I think there's more alcohol in some breads and some orange juices than there are in
Oh,
beer.
I was going to say orange juice is another one that actually I think there's more alcohol in than your 0.5% beer. Yeah, totally. Um, and Mary, you touched on this earlier, this idea of like where are the Gen Zs spending their time and their money? But actually from like a Heineken perspective, what are you seeing like the product formats that are standing out the most? Is there one particular format that we can really see Gen Z tapping into more? No, you're already shaking your
No,
head.
no. Well, think about what age Gen Z are. So they're in their experimental phase. So there's not one anything anywhere across the kind of generation. So they're definitely repertoire drinkers, and they're going to vary their drinks of choice based on the setting.
Mm.
And the Gen Z are really into discovery and aesthetic. So the glass has to look right. The bottle is important. Josh, you'll know this. If it's an RTD, the packaging will attract them as well as the product. So, and like I said earlier, they're very international. They have a very international outlook. They really like elevated experiences. So, in previous generations, it would have been very common for young people to start off drinking in economy brands. But we see Gen Z really interested in premium beers, quality ciders, cocktails. So again, they're doing things on their terms. They are prioritizing socializing, like Millie saying it there. It's with and without alcohol, and the same person can feel differently different weeks of the month or days of the week. So the other big thing, I guess, is a shift is maybe in how Gen Z like to moderate as the night goes on. So whether it's a coping mechanism to avoid hangovers, or if it's just so that they're able to enjoy the next day and do their hobbies and activities the next day, compared with millennials who would have actually avoided going out. There was I can't go out tonight because I've XYZ on tomorrow, if there's any sort of event. So, the moderating, it could be low ABV, it could be the zero brands, or, it could be out in a nightclub drinking water or soft drinks. So, like I mentioned, I was at Electric Picnic, the festival at the weekend. And as the night went on, I could see this progressing. Like there was an amazing DJ in the Heineken house, and the dance floor was full and the bar was empty. Now, in my generation, it would have been the exact opposite. We all would have been squished at the bar trying to get a drink with an empty dance floor behind us. So it's just really good to see the kind of the choice there, and they can have it either way, and they're very confident to suit themselves.
Yeah, and actually, Josh, that's probably a great time for to hear from you in terms of like you specialize predominantly in classic cocktails, right? And
Yeah.
like creating a super bar worthy experience no matter where you are. Like, is there a particular one of your cocktails that you see people gravitate to more frequently, or are you really seeing like a full broad spectrum?
Yeah, I think yeah, I mean, I haven't talked yet, so hi everybody, and it's great to be here. So yeah, at White Box, we kind of approach things just from a really internal perspective. So we weren't thinking about trends or what people wanted. We were thinking more like from our own almost perspective, where we just thought, which cocktails do we want to produce? Which ones do we want to offer people? Which ones are like a bit of a hassle to make, maybe, or which ones are interesting, have a history, that kind of thing. So we were thinking about it from a perspective of, we know a lot about cocktails. So we've got something we can offer to the world, like this knowledge, this experience with these drinks, we can just like offer them out. And that's what we've done all along. So we had absolutely no idea which cocktails would be more successful than others, really. And we didn't even make an attempt to guess much either. But it'll be of no surprise, like at the moment, tequila and agave is up, massively, and it's a global thing. So that's big. So that's margaritas. And we've seen a rise in like anything spicy, so spiced margaritas. So everyone wants to put spice on things at the moment. That's like a trend. So some of the trendy ones are growing, but we've also seen pockets of people being really into like cocktails that we've put out that they've never drunk before, that they'd never ordered before, that they didn't know about. And that's quite interesting as well, especially with like Gen Z not having the history of going to the bars over years and years and like building up their favorite and then just having it in a convenient canned format when they can't have it in the bar. And initially we weren't sure if we were really going to tap into any other market other than that. But we found that we can put out a product if it's done well, if it's made well, if it looks good. We can put something out that they haven't heard of before or haven't ordered in a bar, and they can actually get a following off the back of that. And
Because if I'm correct, you've also got like a Belvedere, don't you, as well,
yeah,
which would be a very typically classic cocktail that I
yeah,
wouldn't say like the younger generation would typically go and order. Like you say, a spicy marg, they would understand very quickly, but something like a Belvedere,
yeah,
less
yeah,
so.
yeah. So Boulevardier, it's got like it's from 1920s Paris. It's got a history behind it. It's got an interesting story. You can still go to the bar, Harry's Bar in Paris. You can still go there where it was invented, along with the Bloody Mary and some other drinks. And yeah, we've got that. We've got a Vieux Carré which is from New Orleans and comes from a bar in New Orleans, which rotates. And it's literally been rotating for like 100 years. Called the Carousel. It's still there. They invented a Vieux Carré cocktail, and it's a cognac and American whiskey. So it's French and American combo cocktail. And nobody ever orders it in bars, but people buy it from us, and they really like it. So we've done quite well in not following the trends, in just putting stuff out that we feel good about. And I think I always think that there's a lot of oversimplification, which I think is harming from a brand's perspective. Especially, I think larger corporations look at the large data and the very simple things like, oh, that generation's not going to cocktail bars, or they're not drinking high ABV or something like that. And we put out something that you only get in cocktail bars that's super high ABV and is really popular. So it kind of contradicts completely maybe what some overgeneralizations are seeing. And yeah, I think we follow, like, probably the best way to look at it from our perspective is follow the basic fundamentals of, like, Gen Z you need to get your marketing right, get the principles of marketing right. You need to have a product that is really good and really competitive, because you can now go on like TikTok and you can find out that, if you put out like a mango daiquiri or something, you can find out that there's actually a better one in like California than there is here. And and that kind of lowers the value of your brand proposition immediately by people kind of not having that power and knowledge. And so some of the fundamentals, like about social media information, the ability of, or the willingness to experiment with new things and try new things, all of these things, I think, are like the fundamental things that have affected it. And I think that the overgeneralization and the data is probably affecting from a larger, I know there's a lot of people here from larger companies and marketing teams and things. So that's my 2 cents, I think, from that perspective.
Yeah, no, thank you. It's a really nice insight. To your point, from a challenger brand who's kind of working with different budgets and working in just a completely different way, you've got a little bit more flexibility, which is amazing.
We've actually,
Aaron,
yeah,
sorry.
just say quickly, were you going to say Paul, Meg?
I was going to say, I think it's time for Paul.
And I've just said, I've got a comment from Charlotte in the chat that said, I'm Gen Z and myself and friends love sorry, I'm going to butcher the name, Boulevardier.
At least you didn't butcher it like I did, so
Yeah,
you're good.
so to your point, Josh, as well. And Grace has got a question, but I think let's do the poll first, because it touches on Grace's question as well, and then we'll talk a little bit about digital and social too. So let me pull it up. All right. So, which format is Gen Z most likely to reach for when drinking? Is it beer or cider, spirits or cocktails, RTDs, RTSs, low and no, functional drinks, or heritage brands? So things like Guinness, Bulmers, some of the more legacy brands that have been around for years. Awesome. I can see responses coming in. All right, give it just another minute there. All right. Super. Okay, I think that's good. Let's end it. See results. Interesting. So we've got overwhelmingly, I think majority say RTDs, RTSs, which probably won't come as a surprise, and a few thinking spirits or cocktails. And a few beer and cider functional drinks. So the answer here, according to recent data, is about 42, 43% of Gen Z drinkers are choosing canned cocktails or RTDs, which I think will probably be obvious to a lot of us, but also fits into the kind of trend of having stuff on the go, and what we talked about with Josh in terms of that format as well. So I think hopefully we've got time for one more, which will lead us on nicely to our next section, which is all about digital first. So bear with me 2 secs. I'll pull that up. All right. Sorry, bear with me 2 secs, everybody. A slight technical issue.
We have to have at least one.
At least one. There we go. All right. The second poll. So, social platforms. Which social platform does Gen Z rely on most for discovering new products? Is it Instagram, YouTube, TikTok, or Reddit? Let's just throw that in there for fun. All right. Give you another couple seconds. All righty. And yeah, we've got an overwhelming 88% TikTok for that, which I think backs up what Josh, you were saying about looking at, different, being able to look and compare at different brands very quickly from all over, even across the world, really. So the data on that is TikTok is top for product discovery with 77% of Gen Z users using it for that purpose. So yeah.
Yeah, I think that leads us very nicely on to the fact that Gen Z is ultimately a digital native generation. They're the generation that remember life offline and online. But, although they are digitally native and they understand it very well, it doesn't mean that everything has to happen online. And I think this is quite a good time for us actually to bring Ben's expertise into the conversation. What is it actually that you are looking to do when you want to reach Gen Zs online? Do you find that you need to create a bit of balance for platform specific content? So like we were just discussing there, TikTok versus Instagram or Facebook. Are you even focusing much on the likes of Facebook anymore? And do you have any sort of examples of projects you've worked on that stand out?
Yeah, I mean it's a real balance, really. I think what I would say is that one thing that we notice is that Gen Z, I mean, they can smell like content for content's sake, like instantly. And what lands and some of the work that we've been doing really recently on Magners and on Tenants and Bulmers is like looking at platform native creativity. So it could only like live in one space. So we're not on TikTok for legal reasons. But you see stuff working on TikTok that's translating really well over to Instagram, which is the kind of lo-fi humor, sort of behind the scenes stuff. You also see brands, especially in the US, on Reddit and Discord, answering questions, sparking debates. And the important bit there is like, obviously they're being part of the culture, not just sort of advertising it. And I think, yeah, in terms of like what's working, the best performing content that we've got with Tenants and Magners, to use an example, isn't the big glossy stuff. It's been sort of fun, trend-led, probably more scrappy moments that belong on people's feeds. And not focusing necessarily on like likes or comments, but like just a laugh or a sending it to their mate via DM. That's where our engagement's really, really working. So yeah, I mean, we talked about traditional marketing there. You don't really follow a funnel necessarily anymore, but like definitely a balancing act of like really focusing on your platform native, fast moving stuff, and then supplementing that in the middle for sort of consideration or conversion with like the brand storytelling stuff. And then the bottom is like a always on, looking to drive discovery and conversion. I suppose the reason for thinking about it like that in that pyramid way is that without the top layer, you're never going to cut through. And then without the base and without the performance side of it, you're never going to convert. So it's really about working all that in tandem and using digital channels to do that. But yeah, it's a really interesting space. It's moving so fast all of the time, like
constantly changing, right?
Yeah, every second week we have to look at something different. But it's about trialing and learning and moving with the times as they come.
Yeah, and actually, Andy's asked a question that kind of feeds into something I was going to say to you or ask you, Ben, is that the actual stance on alcohol in TikTok at the moment, as far as I'm aware, is that alcohol brands cannot advertise their products on TikTok. However, they can use the likes of content creators. So you couldn't, for example, have a Magners TikTok account, but they could maybe work in partnership with content creators to get the brand out there. Have you guys done much of that? Do you see any success with it?
Yeah, so we've talked directly with the overlords at
You've
TikTok.
managed to get through to them.
Yeah,
Well done.
yeah. I cornered someone at an event in London last year, and then yeah, so you are not allowed to advertise alcohol on TikTok. That is the line, and that is um through whatever means you want. You can't really be there promoting it. The workarounds for that, which some people have found, are that if you're a pub, you can advertise being a pub. So working with customers and things like that, there is people doing that very successfully. The influencer route is a difficult one because as soon as you pay someone or have a commitment with them to promote your product, then you are promoting your product. So you can't do that. But I'm sure there's ways around it. Being part of a big evil corporation, as we've discussed, we're very much probably on the risk averse side of stuff like that. But you see the likes of, Brewdog, they were doing stuff on TikTok, more of the sort of fast moving craft brands. They are just trying it and seeing where they get to. But yeah, the rule is that you're not allowed to do it in any way, shape, or form. Yeah.
I think hopefully that'll help because Anna's also got a question which we can discuss too. But I think what are the opportunities for alcohol or higher ABV brands, and how can brands can win in this context if they're not allowed to be there? And I think it's interesting as well because it's not just alcohol. I've got my partners in the kind of sexual wellness industry, and you can't advertise anything to do with protection or things like that, anything that might even mention sex or alcohol. So it is an interesting space, and yeah, it is a big question for how brands can tap into those markets because Gen Z is certainly interested in those two things as well. So yeah, I think it's interesting. But we'll come on to that a little bit more, Anna, as we discuss.
Yeah.
So Meg.
No, thank you. And actually, Millie, I think you're obviously a great person to speak to. You have a massive digital presence online. You speak face to face and through digital platforms with these consumers all the time. Do you think there's a nice bridging gap between that digital and physical world? And yeah, what are you seeing success in, and where are you seeing those opportunities for growth?
Yeah, definitely. I think we really try and see it as like not offline and online as like two separate things. We really try and do like a very 360 approach with it. And I think also bridging the gap by having now things like a WhatsApp platform and a newsletter. And I think one of the things is like when we work with brands, we really try and encourage them to be part of like the whole thing. I think kind of what Ben was saying about like being part of the culture and not just like advertising to it. So we really try and get brands involved in like both the online and offline stuff. So like an example of a partnership that we've done that's worked really well, we've been working with Brita, as in like the water filters. And so we've done some like amazing digital content with them that's been really fun, but also we've done lots of in real life events with them. And one of the biggest things I think is that it's allowed us to like take our community to really cool things, which I think has been great. So rather than just being like, hey, I'm doing this like really cool event with Brita, this is why you should buy it. So we did like an event. They've got a partnership with the Lawn Tennis Association. So they ran an event which was a tennis event lesson with Jamie Murray, and we got to invite loads of our community. So just
Wow.
people who like every day just engage with us, and we advertised it and said like 20 tickets to give away, come. And people had like the best day, posted loads about Brita. Like I think it's doing those 360 partnerships. So as part of that, we did content. The girls that came did content. We also invited a couple of other content creators who did content. So it's kind of that like real 360 thing. We did a lot of stuff in the WhatsApp group. We did a lot of stuff on the newsletter. I think people think like, or brands will think we want to get involved in your offline stuff or we want to get involved in your online. And I think it's trying to bring it all together and have that like 360 approach, and like we keep talking to brands about like WhatsApp groups and stuff, and they're like, oh no, we don't really want anything on the WhatsApp group. We're like, but this is like bridging it. I think brands don't realize how many of their conversations about their brands happen like offline, sort of like in the shadows, where that is someone resharing to their friend or talking to a mate in the WhatsApp group. Like it's where most of the stuff gets recommended. So yeah, I think it's taking that like real 360 and not seeing it as like this is online content and this is like an offline event. I think it's bridging the gap between all of it.
Yeah, no, I totally agree with that. And you've got such a unique insight having that WhatsApp chat. Honestly,
That
you
being a
must learn
spy.
about all these new brands all the time, which is
Yeah,
amazing.
yeah. I see what everyone likes. I also see what everyone doesn't like.
Doesn't like.
Being
Yeah,
friends,
that's very
they're not
true.
scared about giving their opinions, which is great.
Yeah, and actually, I think that really leads us nicely. You've spoken a lot about experiential there, and I think one thing that we haven't necessarily spoken about a massive amount so far is kind of the on-trade as well. So that on-trade and experiential strategy is obviously a massive part of drinks brands. And actually, Dan, you have a long experience in the on-trade and now rethinking this into those social spaces. So how do you think that brands can be collaborating maybe with venues to create experiences that really land with that Gen Z audience and something that they actually want to capture and to Millie's point, share online with their own audiences?
Look, you need to look at this holistically, as Millie said. Gen Z just don't want to go out for a drink anymore. They're out for the whole experience. So they're also pretty cynical. They don't like to be sold to. So, but they definitely want to buy. And there are kind of old rules that, are still at play in the on-trade that were just as relevant kind of 10 years ago as they are today. And that's, ensuring that the channels that you're playing in are respected. You are a brand playing in someone else's channel who are also a brand looking to engage with a consumer who's on their very kind of personal experience. So, it's I guess accepted that you're going to want to push some of your brand messages, but do it in collaboration with the channel. Do it in with sympathy for the experience that the consumer is having. There is a brand that I absolutely love that's out there at the moment called Bativo.
Oh, yeah.
Great, great liquid, amazing liquid, but such a positive brand, personality. And every time they show up, regardless of the channel, they do it in a way that's collaborative with that venue. But it's still very distinctive. They've got the yellow waxed seal, they've got the yellow piano that rocks up every now and again, and it's a vibe, and people want to be with that, but it's respective of the channel that you're in. So I think it's really important that when you're a brand thinking of engaging in a channel, your message almost plays third fiddle.
Yeah,
So,
I think that's a great way of putting it.
and also I think there's more there's more of these I guess third spaces that we need to look at, where traditional on trade, yes, traditional off trade, yes, we sort of have formulas for those, but as Millie's alluded to, you've got kind of sober raves, you've got run clubs that are associated with retail spaces, with brands, with the on trades. You've got, I'm trying to think now, yes, there's a place in Peckham called the Sauna Social Club, where
Yeah.
you can go. There's a listening room, and then there's there's obviously sauna and cold plunge. So this kind of social wellness is a thing. People are going out and and kind of leaning into wellness and doing it as a collective. And I think the clever brands are spotting that. They're going, look, okay, well, we're not just going to play in the usual places. We're going to play in these kind of edges of what is the perceived norm spaces. And there's a collaboration I saw with In Tune, which is a CBD brand that doesn't get spoken about too often, but I know has just got into investment and just got a celebrity co-founder in Ella Air, and they've done a collaboration with Slow-Mo, which is Rob the Bank's sauna and cold plunge business that pops up all over London, and he's got some in the Isle of Wight as well. But that kind of like collaboration where it really is part of someone's holistic wellness routine, and it's almost like, oh, of course I'm going to want to see that brand there. That's obvious, rather than brand pushing your message.
Well, and actually, with more and more pubs across the UK in particular, we can speak as a UK agency, like more of these pubs are closing by the day. So actually, we need more of these third spaces where people are actually showing up. for people to connect just from a social level, but equally, to your point, it offers a new opportunity for brands to get stuck in and show up in a way that they may never have imagined before.
I mean, look, obviously I'm slightly biased because of the angle that I'm taking, because I'm helping brands look to see where they might evolve their current strategies to suit a world where there's other mood altering substances. But you can see it in the festivals now. I think Happy Place Festival has just been. I'm not sure if the festival you just been to, Mary, has a big wellness or kind of lean in that space. But Millie said she'd just spoken at the Reading Festival about being sober, which is huge removal from my day at Reading in Leeds for sure. But it's happening, and I believe there will be a no booze festival before long. And I know in the States, Live Nation are looking at kind of cannabis only festivals. So there's this kind of like functional. And I don't like the word functional. I think it's really kind of stayed. And I know there's a terminology that's been used in the States called social tonics, which I definitely like as a kind of catch-all category name for anything other than alcohol.
Yeah, absolutely. And actually, Mary, that kind of brings me to bring you back into the fold. And at Heineken, you'll be working with the venues, festivals, nightlife brands in particular, that nightclub scene, which has drastically changed since the pandemic. But what does a Gen Z first on-trade experience look like? Like, can you give us a bit of insight to what you were getting up to at one of those festivals at the weekend?
Yeah, well, our brands, I would say, have already kind of started to tap into the Gen Z, that desire for self-expression and cultural relevance. So we are doing more experience-led kind of media strategies of things. So one of our brands, Orchard Thieves, they nailed this with a photo booth activation that they did at Charlie XCX during the summer. And then they also replicated that at the festival I was just at, Electric Picnic. So basically fans could snap branded photos in a photo booth throughout the day. And then some of those pictures were selected and put up on the big screen,
Yeah, nice.
branded. So like it was total blending of digital shareability with a real world experience. And then that again gives people Gen Z, a way to express themselves while aligning with a brand. So I think, other things we've done is, again, instead of telling people what to do, seeing what people are doing. So you're allowed to bring in cans into the camping sections of festivals, and you're actually allowed to bring in 48 cans if you're thirsty, or if you're very sociable with your neighbouring tents. But nobody likes a warm can of beer, and especially if you're going to be there for 3 days. So, Heineken have brought chiller fridges into the campsite. So it's essentially like a cloakroom. You put your beer in the fridge and then you come and pick it up with your tickets whenever you're ready. So I think that just aligns, with pre-drinks and younger people saving money. Going to a festival is a very expensive thing to do. So that's a good way for people to be more economical if they do want to drink beer, or to be more connected and socializing by having something of high value to offer to your friends and neighbours, a cold beer. And this year we did something quite cool in the Heineken House where we did foam tops. So the foam had a flavour. So there was like mixed berry,
Oh, nice.
and there was a tropical one, and there was like a orange spritz. And we did that through a sampling activation where it's like a little mini beer, and people were doing a CX. So they were giving us their email address and we were giving them this new sample for free at a festival. So that was cool. And we do a lot with merchandise as well. So there's a cool streetwear lifestyle brand over here called Emporium, and they designed a collab t-shirt for Electric Picnic. So it's dual branded Heineken, it was the Heineken brand and Emporium. And on Sunday morning, it was put out through the app that there were 100 t-shirts for free for the first 100 people. Of course, so many people showed up, but there was 100 happy people at the top of that queue. And Beamish, who my wall behind me here, they're stout. They also, during the day at a festival, when there's no real music on and people are just kind of milling around, they had merchandise for sale. And again, really thronged. People want to wear your brand. If imagine like if you can get Gen Z actually using your brand as a way of kind of self-expression, like you're winning at that. And then we had, I don't know, I'm sure you're all familiar with Kneecap. I don't know if for good or bad reasons, but even Mowgli Bap, one of the singers, the one who's not in trouble, was swigging out of a can of Beamish during his set in front of 80,000 people. So like they're all things that are far more impressive to Gen Z than, you know, big 48 sheets on the road in, or, you know, older kind of media. And so from an on-trade perspective, it's showing up in unexpected but really relevant ways. I think that's what cuts through. And it's just kind of around if you're being really meaningful and finding ways to enhance your brand with what Gen Z are looking for, and different activations can be quite powerful.
Yeah, absolutely.
I love the fridges. That's great. The cloak them.
Yeah.
Awesome. Shall I launch one more, Paul, before we move on to our next question?
Yeah, go for it.
Teeing us up for our next section on more about kind of identity, aesthetics, and authenticity with Gen Z. Got a little bit of a trivia question for you all. So which cult RTD brand began as a US viral success story and was acquired for $500 million? Was it White Claw, Truly, Buzzballs, or Magnum? Awesome. Give another couple seconds. All right. All right. Last call. Super. So, quite an even split there. We've got 51% thinking it's White Claw and 43% thinking it's Buzzballs. And the answer is Buzzballs. So, yeah, Buzzballs really captured Gen Z's attention and was acquired by Sazerac for around 500 million. So, yeah, very, I think that tees us up quite nicely when we're talking about aesthetics and packaging format, because Buzzballs is, of course, very unique. Lovely. Meg, back over to you.
Yeah, well, like you say, how a drink looks is really part of people's identity, and you know how they are perceived when they're drinking the drink is really important to them. So brands can't fake that. If you've got bad branding, you can't hide it. But that is one thing that you guys have absolutely nailed, Josh, is getting great branding that really taps into that Gen Z love for aesthetics, but it goes more than just looking the part. So to you, what role does formats, convenience, and design play into creating something that people want to buy?
Yeah, good question. Good question. And nice that you had that poll right before as well, because I don't then need to like brand drop Buzzballs out there. But I almost can't talk about what we're doing without talking about Buzzballs, as they're by far and away our biggest competitor in the market by $1 billion or something crazy like that. So that's Buzzballs. We are seeing. I also wanted to comment on the TikTok thing, but I held off a bit. I know a lot of people were talking about, like, I get it. If you're a brand, you know that TikTok is the right way to be going to target Gen Z, but you don't actually know how to do it. And then there's the frustration, and you probably waste a lot of money in the process. But one example is that we get so much like what's like exposure basically on TikTok from Buzzballs. So basically, when people put up their Buzzballs on TikTok, they like to compare us to Buzzballs. So they're like, oh, I've got Buzzballs, and like, let's see how it tastes against White Box. And so we get more, like, by a million miles more exposure and more like brand building from that than we get from our having our own TikTok strategy. So TikTok is so user led, and it probably will be for a long time, and maybe always for alcohol. But like, yeah, there's no point in thinking about it as like we need a TikTok channel strategy. You need to be thinking like outside of the box a little bit there. But
well, you guys get great exposure there without a single penny cost to you, which is even better.
Yeah, exactly. we actually get the exposure because we're selling in the shop. So it's like almost even better. We're not spending anything. We're actually
making money
while we get the exposure. And we've seen the same, like we launched in Canada and TikTok was like one of our the biggest drivers of like our brand exposure, I suppose. How that translates to sales and everything, we have absolutely no idea. We have no data. Most of our team barely used TikTok, so that's it. But we just know that it's a big way of getting exposure. So yeah, I think a lot of it comes down to the product, itself. So you need to do something that people are like enjoy sharing. I mean, I've got a can here of our pocket Negroni. It looks cute and fun on screen, and that's probably the reason why we get the exposure on TikTok, and that's it. So basically, what I would say to most brands is focus on the product. It doesn't have to be cute. It's not because it's cute and small. It's just, for us, it's because it's cute and small and fun. For other brands like Guinness or something like that, it's because it looks black and white or whatever it is. It needs to look good on the social media. It doesn't have to be a certain way. So our strategy was to focus on the cocktails. So it came from internally as well. Our problem with a lot of brands was that they devalue the cocktail by putting a very basic branding on there. Either they devalue the cocktail by going brand first, like you have Johnny Walker Old Fashioned. And of course, if you're a brand manager of Johnny Walker, you're not going to be standing up there saying, I think, the Old Fashioned brand itself is actually bigger than Johnny Walker. You're not going to be able to say that. But from our perspective, it is. So basically, the Old Fashioned is bigger than any single whiskey brand. So why devalue it and slap it on as like a small thing at the bottom of the can, or like a differentiator in the line of like, cocktails, along with maybe a color or something like that differentiates it. We feel like all of that just devalues the cocktail. An Old Fashioned started 200 years ago, has like a history. It went through Prohibition. It was on Mad Men, or whatever it is you associate with it. It's like got this history. So we felt like we need to design. There's not much we can do on a tiny can, but what we can do, we need to do it. So we tried to do as much of the cocktail in a can as we could. And for the Negroni, it's not instantly noticeable, but we didn't, if you stick an Italian flag or something on it and call it Italian Negroni, you get to the kind of like, I don't know, supermarket own label level of brand building there. So it's just Italian. We felt like, what's like the occasion, what's fun about a Negroni, or like what is it that people like about it? Do they feel happy about drinking Negroni, or do they sit there and want to calm down, or whatever it is? So we just felt like it was this nice, happy, fun, slightly Italian inspired thing that people drink usually kind of in the daytime, maybe like as an aperitif or whatever. So like it's a bit brighter maybe than others. And if you've seen our other cocktails, we designed them completely different based on what we felt like would bring the most to that drink. So yeah, it's a long way of talking around it, but I think the lesson there is to focus on the brand, and what you're really offering. And just if you have the ability as a brand owner to offer more, Gen Z and people using TikTok will take that more, and they'll like, they'll embrace it. So if you're able to offer more of something to people, more interest, more fun, more cuteness, more design, whatever that is, if you can offer more, then offer it. And I think that then drives the likability of it. But yeah, from our brand perspective, it's literally about doing justice to each drink, like giving
the cocktail first.
Yeah, putting the cocktail first. I think it's a slippery slope to focus on, especially nowadays with the speed of information. By the time a brand is like focused on a particular moment or particular trend, it's gone.
Yeah.
So like we had everyone asking us for Negroni Spagliatos like for about 6 weeks. And then no one was interested after that. So luckily we didn't jump on that trend, So like,
but I'm sure your pocket Negroni's probably got a few sales out of it off the back of people just finding the love of a Negroni again.
exactly. So maybe, and we don't know, but you kind of never know. So if it does come back to the Negroni, you need to be like the most Negroni out there, right? So then that's how you will get people coming back to it.
Yeah, thank you so much. That was really insightful, and getting lots of comments in the chat. People are loving what you're saying, so thank you, Josh. And actually, just before we kind of close off this section, Daniel, it would be great just to get your insight on the fact that people often call Gen Zs this identity generation. And, in your view, what does that mean? And how do you think that drinks brands can actually be showing up authentically? And what might that look like to an audience? You kind of touched on it earlier, that brands have got to show up at the right place that connects the two partnerships really well for it to be a success. Do you have anything extra to add to that?
Just good. I mean, Josh, you just gave a great example there of genuine authenticity. And for Gen Z, your drink is part of your personal brand. So it's really important that the can in your hand is a signal of who you are as an individual. So that's why aesthetics do matter, but that's just not enough. Authenticity is about consistency. It's about your product. It's about design, your values, all of that lining up. And then obviously if you get all that right and you get your distribution right, you're in the right environment, then, I think it's about making sure that it all works together, but in a neat system. Heritage brands shouldn't look to try and reinvent themselves on TikTok and do something, wildly, kind of out of kilter. And similarly, a startup brand shouldn't go too deep into freight provenance, because Gen Z will forgive imperfections, but they won't forgive inauthenticity. I think that's really, really key here. So, so how you show up, it's okay to make mistakes, focus on, in real life stuff, build in public. That whole kind of narrative is really important. And just to be clear, like in any generation, cultural relevance is not contrived. If you try too hard, it's just not going to happen.
Yeah, that's very true. I actually think you've led me really, really nicely into our next section, kind of thinking about that brand strategy and the fact that Gen Z isn't one audience, it's made up of many, many micro communities. And actually, Ben, that's something that you spoke to earlier, and I think it'd be great just to delve a little bit deeper into that. You work with a portfolio of brands, how do you create kind of campaigns that are speaking to those very different Gen Z tribes without doing exactly what Daniel's saying, kind of diluting that fact that you are a heritage brand that has a lot of backbone to it?
Yeah, I mean, Daniel's hit the nail on the head, really. Like, I think from a marketing perspective, the first thing to say is, with your strategy, is don't go chasing every tribe that you have or you can identify. And the way that certainly we look at that is you start with an authentic brand truth, and then you find the communities where that naturally resonates with them. Because if you go with something that's inauthentic, then you get found out, or as soon as it's poked and prodded and questioned, it's so simple to unpack that. So that would be my first point. As an example of that, we've got Tennent's and Bulmers, these big heritage brands. They have a lot of cultural kudos and identity in humor and in sport. Tennent's sponsors both national teams in football and rugby. So there's an authenticity there that the audiences resonate with. And I think like the way to think about that, and a good analogy or point of it, is like anchored flexibility. So your anchor is that brand truth, that bit of DNA, and then the flexibility is like how that's translated to Gen Z. So that could be like in platform, it could be in the way that you're talking about it, in the way that you're coming at it. And I think to shout out to team members, my colleagues Nick and Nadine do that really well for our sports partnerships. They don't just go and stick a big poster up at Murrayfield or whatever. They go about and they try and tailor tenants as a talking point, but to where it's being talked about. And I think that's really important. And I think yeah, as a sort of tighter analogy, like a really good way to think about it and how you're reaching out to this is like, if a band has like a signature sound, they could play their signature sound in different styles, like acoustic or electronic or with an orchestra, but the sort of through play or the melody in that is recognizable, and it's always there and it's always resonating. So that's how you could scale that across multiple platforms, across multiple touch points, and still really hit a truth and an authenticity that'll win with an audience.
Yeah, that's such a good analogy. Thank you so much for sharing. And I think, Aaron, it's probably time for another final poll from yourself.
Yeah, and I was actually just going to say, just quickly, if we've got time before, I've got an interesting question from Charlotte in the chat about particularly what should luxury heritage brands in struggling categories do to pivot and survive to tap into Gen Z, for example, cognac, Armagnac, wine. So I don't know if anybody's got any advice on that. Yeah, cognac is an interesting one.
Sorry, Aaron, I think you cut out on my side. I wasn't sure if that was anyone else, but I think what Aaron was trying to say is what should luxury heritage brands in struggling categories, such as your cognacs, do to pivot and survive with these new audiences? Does anyone have any thoughts or insights?
I was gonna pipe up there if no one else did, but I'm thinking like this is my perspective, but let's take cognac and Armagnac. I landed in New York a while ago, and the first thing the taxi driver told me was where you can get $5 Hennessy and Cokes. And if I was a heritage luxury, I don't know what your strategy is if anyone's at Hennessy or whatever, but like that's not a luxury brand. So what I would say is that if you want to target Gen Z like properly as a luxury brand, I would take a look inwards again and be like, actually take a hard kind of look and say, are we actually being a luxury brand? And have we done any marketing really for this generation that makes us a luxury brand? And I would then go, if the answer is like, yes, it's like, have we done as much as we can? And if not, I would do more. Mm-hmm. And if you actually find that you're only operating at 50% of where it should be, double your efforts and become more of what you are. Mm-hmm. And Armagnac, happens to be from France. So I don't know, I would, if I was an Armagnac brand, I would become more French and I would just take a punt, even if the data said Gen Z is not interested in French luxury brands, I would do it anyway, basically. That's my perspective, is like, just double down on what you are. I think it's much faster for this generation to check if you're being fake and if you're not being truly authentic. So, and it will just collapse, or you'll have to prop it up with billions of dollars of marketing budget or something. But if I was an Armagnac, I would just become more French, more luxury, more interesting, and more of whatever makes Armagnac interesting. If it's the vintages or the the regional thing, the grapes, whatever it is, double down on that and do it more. That's my perspective. Don't get distracted.
Yeah,
good advice. Yeah,
real single-minded approach. I like it.
I'm just going to say, on the flip side to that, depends on how brave you are. There's one thing that I'm seeing is this, category blurring of industry. Sorry, there's a blurring of industries and categories. So it might be an opportunity to look at how other brands are playing in other industries, and having a look over there. I think brands are built differently these days. Traditionally, it was all about on trade and on premise building of brands and growing the scale in the off trade, and obviously now there's a big D2C, digitally native kind of push to build in that channel first. But like we've got kind of soft drinks acting like supplements brands, and we've got there's lots of different borrowing we can take from other industries. So it depends on how brave you are. But I love Josh's provocation. Find out who you are and do it on purpose.
Yeah.
Great. Lovely. I think we've got time for one more poll before we move on to the last question of the day. So, looking to the future, if it's going to let me do this, sometimes it doesn't. Bear with me 2 secs. Let's see if I can. Give me 2. There we go. Sorry, slight Zoom tech stuff today. Okay, lovely. A look to the future. So, love to hear from the audience here. What's the one cultural or behavioral shift you think will have the biggest impact on how Gen Z drinks in the next 5 years? This could be a word or a very short sentence, but feel free to type them in, and we'll read them out. Lovely. Just give it a few more seconds. I mean, there's many things, right? It could be multiple, but I think interesting to hear what people think. All right, I'll just give it another couple seconds. All right, and let's see what results we've got. So, if it will let me share them. Can anybody see that? Meg, your end?
I can't see anything here. I can just see that it was answered, but I can't see the short answers, unfortunately.
Here, I'm so sorry, guys. We're having a bit of tech with the poll today. All right, I'll work on that on the end, but let's move on to the back question, shall we? The last one, Meg. And I'll see if I can figure it out.
Thank you so much. But yeah, so we've only got a short amount of time left, but of course we can't go through this whole webinar without looking to the future and thinking about how brands can be evolving. So I'm going to open this one up to the wider panel. I've got 2 questions left, but I think my question to you all would be, if you had to place your bet on one thing that you think will define the next phase of Gen Z drinking, what would it be? Go on, Ben.
Yeah.
I'll jump in. I think the one bet that I would make is that it's a good question. Probably Gen Z will keep like reshaping drinking occasions into that blend of like social in real life moments and digital moments. There's been 2 in my world really good examples of that recently. Guinness and their agency Born Social have just released bar mats where you can pop out the middle, which is in the shape of a pint of Guinness, and take a photo of your Guinness moment. So you can like see through and take a photo of what's happening. I think that's a really good execution. A poor example of that, in my opinion, is something that we were sort of pitched a while ago, which was like a thing, a scan in a pub, and then you would go and play a game, which I think has those 2 elements, but it doesn't blend them. It goes from one and then harshly on to the next. And I just think, you're in a pub to have a drink with your friends and Gen Z really, socialize and really enjoy that. And to take you out of that moment to sit on your phone is probably not the best way of doing it. So yeah, a reshaping of that, but that hybrid approach to rituals.
Yeah, thank you. Any more on that one?
Two socials for me. Yes, social tonics. They are going to continue to grow and to be a prevalent part of Gen Z's kind of drinking repertoire and other generations as well. And social wellness, I believe that is a term that we will see prop up even more. That's third space expanding to be, again, more common, and you'll have your local sauna as well as you have your local pub. That's just going to be part of the course. And if I had one piece of advice, it would be for businesses to start experimenting now. Do you know what I mean? Let's like get ahead of this, seed your brand in unexpected places, do pop-ups, trials, prototype quickly, don't wait for permission. Gen Z are already living in the future, and they'll move faster than any category. So just get involved and start kind of experimenting.
Yeah.
And I'd jump in, Megan and Aaron, and just say I think like for organizations to have a portfolio play is really important. And whether that's line extensions or completely different offerings, we know Gen Z are repertoire drinkers. I don't think they're going to change. The whole digital native social media thing, like it doesn't matter if you grew up in a capital city or in a tiny village in the middle of nowhere, you're getting exposed to these trends and ideas from all over the world into your pocket, into your hand. So I think they're just going to be a generation of repertoire. They're going to be trying new things. So to engage with them is to have more than one offering, to have something for all those different need states, and so that they keep feeling that it's a fresh thing and they'll come back. It's a repertoire. It's like cooking your dinners. You have a certain amount of repertoire that you eat, and I think people have a certain amount of things that they'll drink as well.
Yeah, thank you so much.
I
And
would
last but not
say
least, Josh, yeah.
a quick addition to that. I would say that I would guess what we're betting on is the simplicity, kind of the trend of keeping things simple, kind of continuing. Like people requiring people to actually put less effort and thought into things is probably going to be necessary for brands. So having simple messages that are really clear and easy to understand, and making it easy to get for consumers to pick up your product, to open it, to pour it, whatever it is, making it super simple, because we feel that people are just going to be more and more time strapped, or like be more spread with how they use their time. That's probably a practical bet that I would make. And yeah, maybe that's for like an Armagnac brand, to go back to that example, that could be doing miniatures, or something. Like, don't make it difficult maybe for everyone to buy your brand. Like, I don't know, that's things like that.
I feel an idea brewing from you there, Josh. That'll be the next one we see coming out of White Box. But
Armagnac, yeah.
thank you so much. And I think like that's a really beautiful place for us to leave the conversation today. But thank you everyone so
Quickly
much.
add, Millie, did you have anything you wanted
Oh,
to
sorry,
add?
No,
Millie.
I was just going to back up Josh minutes, because I think one of the big shifts I think is going to be trend fatigue. I think we're already seeing it. I have seen people be like, if I see one more brand launch a like paddle tennis event, I'm going to scream. Like, I think the people are gonna like, sorry if anyone is still they're still at the top of it now, but I think like it's getting to the point where people are like, I'm over it, and then it's the next thing, and then it's the next thing. I think people are going to retreat back to a bit of simplicity. So I back up what Josh is saying. I think that will be the next thing, is people will just be like, I'm tired. I don't want to go to this thing again.
No more paddle.
No more paddles. I've still yet to do it, to be fair, so I would like to, but I think at some point, like it's brands doing the same thing. So I think either doing something completely new and something completely unique, or retreating and going back to like really simple things.
Yeah, thank you. Well, yeah, massive amount of information shared over the last hour and a half. Like, huge thank you to every single one of you for joining, firstly, and to, of course, to our panel, who have shared so much rich insight. But I think, like, for me, if I were to think of like what are my three key takeaways from today, is that Gen Z is already here and they are reshaping the now, not the tomorrow. So brands really can't afford to wait on this anymore. Relevance and authenticity matter more than they ever have. And brands have to understand how to be culturally fluent and not fall into that gimmicky space because Gen Z will sniff it out immediately. And last but not least, opportunity lies in the bravery, and that I think really lands to everything that everybody has just said here. Brands that are curious, creative, and responsive and bold within their categories are the ones that will win with the generation. So once again, thank you so, so much to all of our panelists today for sharing your insights and your energy and your contributions. It is massively appreciated. And I will hand you all back to the wonderful Aaron. Thank you again, Aaron, for all your tech support. I couldn't have done that without you. So
Well,
thank
it's
you.
seamless, but there's always something that goes wrong. So yeah, just a big thank you to the speakers for your time, Meg for hosting, and also for the audience, everyone who's joined today. You've been a really interactive group, and it's nice to see, yeah, lots of different kind of questions come up. There are a few questions, apologies, I know we didn't get to answer, but I'll make note of those, and yeah, we can hopefully share some responses with you over email. I'll just end by saying that we'll also be doing a in-depth insight report on the topic of Gen Z. So taking everything we've kind of touched on in this webinar today and diving a little bit deeper. So I've popped a link in the chat for anybody who'd like to receive that report. Feel free to sign up using the link there, and we'll make sure we get that over to you. But it's been a real pleasure, and great to see some familiar faces in the audience and some new ones as well. So thank you very much, and a big thank you to all our speakers. I think the future certainly looks exciting and bright, and there's lots of opportunities ahead. So yeah, I think we'll leave it there for the day. But thank you, everybody, and yeah, hope to see you all soon.